Brandon Sanderson said the gloves are coming off when it comes to Cosmere Connections in his books, and boy did he mean it.
Because from now on, the gloves are off.
So first we got The Lost Metal, which had the most Cosmere crossover we've ever seen in any Cosmere related book. And then it's followed up immediately with Secret Project #1, Tress and the Emerald Sea. So I've just finished reading it, and let me tell you, it is a Cosmonaut's dream. This is just it's a fantastic story. Like, you take out all the Cosmere fun stuff and it's still a wonderful story. And it's a full-length novel, but it reads like a Brandon Sanderson novella. I mean, it's only 100,000 words or so it is pretty short for him, but it's a clear, concise story. It's a lot of fun, but you're not here for that. You're here for the Cosmere connections. So let's go ahead and dive into it. These are just some of the Cosmere connections that I pulled out of it that I thought were interesting that I wanted to talk about. So if you've seen more or have disagreements to me, please let me know down in the comments. Love to hear about it. I've been reading about it nonstop, talking to people about it, and I just want that to continue like forever. First off, the entire story is narrated by Hoid. So that's big in and of itself, because this is without doubt the most that we have gotten of Hoid's voice as his storytelling type. We've heard him tell short stories and things in other books. You know, he's had some dialogue in some other books, but he's not really been a main POV, and he's not really had his voice explored in depth. And this one, you get a ton of it. Sanderson is trying to kind of really nail down how he wants Hoid's voice to sound for the upcoming, many years away, Dragonsteel, which will tell the backstory of Hoid, and more likely the shattering and all of that fun stuff. So we get a ton of Hoid in this book. So I'm just ecstatic about that. And he drops a lot of hints and a lot of clues, and even for someone that's read all of the Cosmere, there's a lot of things he says that I'm like, what you talking about? So as far as the magic system goes on this world, in this book, it's, typical Cosmere book. You get a new magic system to learn with lots of rules and all, but this is only the second time that we have had ether mentioned, and that's a big deal, because ether is not shard related magic. As far as we can tell, it predates the shattering, it predates shards, and it's unrelated. So that has a lot of implications as far as the Cosmere goes, and the everything happening everywhere else. So the more we know about this, the more theories we can make and then have them proven wrong. So if you remember, ether was the stuff that was used in the Lost Metal for Twin Soul to make all of the stuff that he made, his armor that he wore, and down to the teacup thing that he had. Everything was ether, and that's what is literally all over this world. It has seas of ether spores, and they say in the book that there's 12 types of spores, allegedly a 13th one that no one can really make up their mind on if it's white or if it's black. That, I'm pretty sure, is white sand, maybe related to spores, but not necessarily like in the group of spores. So we have 12 types of spores, but honestly I think there's 16. I mean, if you remember Mistborn, Final Empire, there were 10 metals. That was it. Now there's 16. I think similar things going on with the spores here. We have 12 that everyone knows about. This may be 13th one, but really there's 16. I mean, it's what makes sense to me. But this is non-shard related, so that could just be wrong. We'll find out, I guess, later in more books. But the really interesting thing when it comes to magic-wise with these spores is it seems this is a different type of bond that we've seen pretty much anywhere else. So everywhere else we've seen a nihil bond, which is a cognitive bond between individuals and the magic source. This is a Luthil bond, which is a physical connection to the magic. So you have to drink water, and the water is the conduit, physical conduit between you and the ether, making that connection. So it's not a cognitive one. That's vastly different than what we've seen. But it also pulls into question, we have the physical realm, the cognitive realm, and the spiritual realm. So does that mean that we'll eventually have a third connection type? That's something to be looking out for. Also, you get talking about a spiritual bond for magic systems to work. It kind of makes me think of Nightblood. So Nightblood basically eats your soul-ish kind of thing, so that may be some kind of related. We know Nightblood is an oddball that we really don't know nearly enough about to be confident on anything he can do, it can do. I don't know how to address Nightblood. But I also don't think this is the first time that we've seen a Luthil bond. So it's a physical connection. You have to drink the water to have the connection to the spores. Anybody remember Lift? Lift has to eat pancakes or any kind of food, but preferably pancakes, to fuel up on magic, which is different than everyone else on Roshar that has to do it through a stormlight, whether it be from the storm directly or spheres or something like that. They have to get it through stormlight. She can get it through stormlight or by eating. And Brandon Sanderson has said before that she is different. But I think Lift has a physical bond and a cognitive bond, which makes her extremely powerful as far as being able to draw upon magic. And we meet a dragon on this world, Luma, as well. And what does he do? He makes trades and grants boons. Apparently that's just a dragon thing. We don't know anything about dragons, unfortunately. Practically nothing. We do know that Brandon Sanderson loves dragons, but other than that, we're kind of lacking in information on Cosmere dragons. There's a lot of connection that I see between the spores, this new type of bond, Lift, and Roshar, and the Midnight Mother, and then also the Midnight Sea that they go sailing on has these creatures made out of this, like, all black stuff. All right, and Dalinar fights one of those in his visions in the forms of big cats, and I think Shallan fights something similar. So those, I think they're midnight spores, midnight essence. I think even the same name is used across those two, so there's some kind of tie-in there. We're seeing, I believe, ether type magic used on Roshar during Stormlight. Just it's not very widely used and not really widely known. But I feel like that's going to be a big tie-in in the 5th book coming out here soon. I think all of that's going to be real important in the 5th book. This book, we also have wizards from the stars bringing down technology. This is probably the latest in the Cosmere books that we have as far as the timeline goes. Space travel, totally a thing. We knew it was coming, but this is the first time we've really got a good look at it. Or it's the best look we've gotten of it yet. There was some of it in the Six of the Dusk, but this is, almost commonplace, where these wizards apparently are coming down from the stars and giving technology in the form of magical iPads and stuff. So that's interesting, and yeah, that's got a lot of implications. And it's really interesting to see how Brandon Sanderson's tying in the magic and the technology. We've seen him do that with like Fabrials and things in Mistborn, but this is like taking that to literally iPads and laptops. How would those be created if you had access to light weaving or awakening or all kinds of crazy magic that we have in the Cosmere? And he's integrating all that together into magic techno stuff. So if you thought there was a lot of options when it came to what you could do with the magic raw, imagine all the tech implications you can have with the magic. It's just nearly endless. Marsh is mentioned. Old Iron Eyes is apparently the bringer of death on this planet as well. And it's mentioned in the Lost Metal at the very end of it that Iron Eyes as death is kind of getting around in the Cosmere as far as a legend, and they don't really know how, and it's not really explained how that word's getting out, that death has steel spikes in his eyes. But it could just be that Hoid's talking to a lot of people. Other world harpers are just kind of letting it spill, and it's just getting in vernacular, and it's just kind of happening organically. Or it could be that Marsh is doing some sightseeing himself. That would be interesting, very interesting, especially considering the state that we saw Sazed last in the Lost Metal. yeah, it worries me a little bit what Marsh might have been doing out among the worlds if he was world hopping, which I think is a really big possibility. Speaking of Sazed, and I know this is a little rambly, but the connections are literally a spider web. Because we have Chandra on the ship, so we're talking about Chandra here. And this one is apparently teamed up with Hoid, but Hoid makes the comment of Sazed releasing them and gives no further explanation. And so we don't know if he's just talking about when he let them, start world hopping and stuff, or if he's talking about something where Sazed has literally released them from his connection to them, which would have all kinds of weird implications, and don't really know how that would happen. So, something to chew on there. So, with this being narrated by Hoid, we get some little tidbits here and there about the shattering. Nothing really new, but we get it a lot more condensed and concise. So, at one point he says he was part of a secret plot to kill God, which, again, not something we didn't know, but nice to hear it straight from Hoid. He also, in regards to the words, for your own good, he says that I've said those words along with 16 other people, presumably to God, right before they shattered him into 16 pieces for his own good, apparently. Again, like I said, nothing really new there, but it's nice to hear it just in plain words from Hoid, because you don't usually get that combination. Now, part of my 2023 year of Sanderson, I'm rereading the entire Cosmere, starting off with Elantris, which is good because they are starting to pop up everywhere. So we have a Elantrian as like the main antagonist of this story, and she's actually a part of the IRE, that secret society that we met in the Secret History. She's there, she's part of that, on a rocket ship, which is cool, but also she is using all kinds of crazy technology, which we kind of expect from Elantrians that far in the future. But she has a metal army, apparently, which sounds very similar to the soldiers of red and gold. Also like the awakened army in Warbreaker. So we didn't get much detail on that, which is frustrating, but it's just another, like, oh, you can do this with magic. Okay. We also see Hoid become an Elantrian, pretty much, from the way I understand it. He now has access to that kind of magic, which, of all the different magic types, seems to be the most versatile. You can do pretty much anything with it if you know how to. And so the fact of Hoid having that is worrisome, to say the least. He was scary before this, and now it's like, oh, just something else. But speaking of Hoid's magic, we did not see his Spren this entire book. Spren wasn't mentioned. We didn't see him, hear of him, nothing. If there's anything I missed in regards to his Spren, let me know down in the comments, because that's bothering me. Because timeline-wise, this should be well after he acquired his Spren. So what happened? It's not mentioned. Why isn't it mentioned? It should be mentioned. Hoid's telling the story. Wouldn't he have mentioned it? That's frustrating. And like I mentioned earlier, we get our first real description of a Cosmere dragon. And one of the most prominent things about this dragon is the dragon steel on the dragon. Which, if you didn't know, is the name of Brandon Sanderson's company, Dragonsteel. And should be the title of Hoid's backstory when it gets written, Dragonsteel. So the fact that we are now introduced to Dragonsteel, I think, is pretty important, as it is a actual metal. Assuming it's different than actual just regular steel, assuming it is a different type of steel, dragon steel. Is it dragon steel in combination with dawn shards, what you need in order to shatter a god? Is that kind of the tie-in? That's what I'm leaning towards. Can you harvest some dragon steel, take some dawn shards, 16 of your buddies, and go kill a deity? Is that something that happens? I don't know. But yeah, like I said, it was a good story. Don't get me wrong, but the Cosmere connections were just everywhere. You had people from all the planets, all the magic systems, all thrown in. Hoid telling the story. You get a dragon. That alone makes it one of the best Cosmere books out there. fight me on that. But like I said, if there's something I missed, and I know there is, and I will reread the book multiple times, probably going over it, just let me know down in the comments. I want to hear. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this more. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.